I feel it in my bones, even when I move.
As of today, we are officially 21 days until the start of the 2020 to 2021 NBA season. For teams that went on deep playoff runs in the bubble, this will be the shortest offseason in recent memory. Then there are other teams that did not meet the requirements to enter the NBA bubble, so they haven't played meaningful, organized NBA basketball since March. During this shortened season, the NBA draft and the start of free agency happened within 2 days of each other, and during that span of time, trades were being formally agreed upon and conducted. So it feels like the makeup of teams throughout the league seemingly shifted overnight. Throughout the month of December, I will be previewing every NBA team before the first games on December 22nd, meaning I will be posting every day until the season kicks off. 30 teams in 21 days, the preseason preview series, and we're starting off with the Charlotte Hornets. Last season, the Hornets posted a record of 23-42, putting them at 9th in the Eastern Conference, thus them missing the playoffs. Their top performers were Devontae Graham, PJ Washington, Terry Rozier, and Miles Bridges. Devontae Graham put up 18 points per game, 7.5 assists per game, and shot 37% from 3 on about 9.3 attempts. Devontae Graham was in the Most Improved Player award race, deservedly so, in his second year. Though his field goal percentage wasn't too high and his 2-point percentage from the field wasn't too high or efficient, shooting 37% from 3 on about 9.3 attempts on the Charlotte Hornets, where there's not much playmaking outside of him, that's kind of incredible. PJ Washington scored 12 points per game, put up about 5 rebounds per game, and shot 37% from 3 on about 4 attempts. PJ Washington was one of the better rookies this year, and his ability as a three-point shooter as a big man was very impressive in his rookie year. Terry Rozier put up 18 points per game, got about 4 assists per game, and shot 41% from 3 on about 7 attempts. Similar to Devontae Graham, he put up a high 3-point percentage on a high volume of attempts, and a lot of them coming from his own shot creation, because again, there wasn't a lot of open looks created for Terry Rozier, given that there's not a lot of playmaking on the Charlotte Hornets team, and the Charlotte Hornets team just wasn't that good last year. And lastly, we have Miles Bridges, who put up 13 points per game, 5.6 rebounds, and 33% from 3 on about 4.5 attempts per game. This was Miles Bridges' second year in the league, and his 3-point percentage improved slightly. Also, his points per game improved almost twice as much, but his field goal percentage dropped about 3 to 4%, which is not a good sign. Miles Bridges is a very athletic, slashing type of forward, can either play small forward or some small ball power forward, but he's really going to need that 3-point shot to really unleash the rest of his game. One of their more interesting players is Malik Monk, who came into the league as somebody who could be viewed as a microwave type of shot creator / scorer, but he hasn't really been that much through his first 3 years in the NBA. Last year he put up about 10 points per game, and it was not very efficient. He's going to be entering his final year of his rookie deal. It's going to be interesting to see how much the Hornets are still bought in on what he could be in the league, and if he can kind of prove his value in his last year of his rookie deal before he enters restricted free agency. The offseason for Charlotte was very loaded and very interesting. But in terms of the draft, we know they drafted LaMelo Ball 3rd overall. They also drafted Vernon Carey Jr. 33rd overall and Grant Riller 56th overall. And in terms of free agency, they signed Gordon Hayward on a 4-year, $120 million contract. Now recently, as I'm recording this video, I actually heard about 2 hours ago that Gordon Hayward is going to be going to Charlotte by way of a sign and trade from Boston. I think Boston's going to get a 2nd round pick out of it. So the two most important people in terms of these off-season adjustments are LaMelo Ball and Gordon Hayward. So let's break down the draft of LaMelo Ball. In terms of fit, it's kind of awkward because the Hornets already have 2 point guards on their team that can't really play together on the same court because they're both so small, and then now you're bringing in another point guard that needs the ball in his hands in LaMelo Ball, but definitely provides the ability and versatility to play with another one of these smaller guards between Devontae Graham and Terry Rozier. So we assume one of either Devontae Graham and Terry Rozier are going to be kind of not ostracized out of the rotation, but out of the starting lineup to make way for LaMelo Ball. And we assume that that player will be Terry Rozier because He's making significantly more money than Devontae Graham and LaMelo Ball, and he's a bit older, not as much upside as maybe Devontae Graham has. So we assume that the starting lineup will be LaMelo Ball and Devontae Graham in that backcourt. It's going to be interesting to see how they work off of each other. I think Devontae Graham has a lot of ability to play off of the ball because of his shooting ability, to allow LaMelo to really create for him and others. And this was a pick that was kind of necessary. I don't think Charlotte could really draft based off of need. They just needed to take the best player available. And in my opinion, LaMelo Ball was definitely the best player available. And in a lot of people's opinions, LaMelo Ball is the player with the highest upside in the draft. So you can't really knock the drafting of LaMelo Ball there. But that was their marquee draft pick. Their marquee signing was probably the more wild ones in this free agency class that nobody really expected. Gordon Hayward, the 4-year $120 million contract. Now, I talked about this in my free agency breakdown video, but I think this is a bad contract. $30 million a year to a player who's not all-star caliber anymore. He's in the middle towards the end of his prime, and he's injury prone. Giving him $30 million per year for 4 years is kind of ridiculous, to be honest. But I mean, money wise, it's kind of ridiculous. But on the court, I think it's a good signing on the court because Gordon Hayward is another player that can operate with the ball in his hands. He can take more pressure off of LaMelo Ball and Devontae Graham, so that can allow them to play a bit more off ball and get some open looks off of Gordon Hayward. And Gordon Hayward is simply a good player. He was averaging, in like his first season in Boston where he was at full health, he was averaging about 18 points per game, 4 or 4.5 assists, and about 5 rebounds very efficiently as well. This is definitely a great fit because, for the reasons I said, his playmaking and his efficiency. He's a player that you can basically plug into any lineup across the NBA, and he'll probably be a plus for you because Gordon Hayward is just a good to great all-around player. I'm just knocking it because of the length and the amount of money that was given to him. Looking at their personnel, at the guard positions, they have Devontae Graham, LaMelo Ball, Terry Rozier, and Malik Monk. At the forward positions, they have Gordon Hayward, PJ Washington, Miles Bridges, and the Cody and Caleb Martin twins, I think. And at the center position, they have Cody Zeller and Bismack Biyombo. Two young players that have kind of a lot to prove this year. Players that were drafted by Charlotte kind of questionably are Malik Monk and Miles Bridges because they're the more experienced young players on this team, given that they're on the 3rd year and 4th year of their respective rookie contracts. So, and their production hasn't really been that valuable, hasn't really been that outstanding. And given that both of these players have a lot of players ahead of them at the guard and forward positions, this is kind of their last year to really prove the value or prove their potential that they showed in the draft. The head coach is James Borrego. I just know that he was a long-term assistant coach in in San Antonio with Greg Popovich. And I think this year was his 1st or 2nd year. So I don't really know that much about him. I'm not going to speak to his coaching ability or lack thereof, if there is lack thereof. Projecting on to next season, I expect the starting lineup to look like LaMelo Ball at point guard, Devontae Graham at the 2 guard, Gordon Hayward at small forward, PJ Washington at power forward, and Cody Zeller starting at center. Just looking at this lineup, this is a lineup that has a lot of shooting potential. Devontae Graham shot 37% from 3 on a high volume, and a lot of those coming off of his own shot creation. Gordon Hayward was a very efficient shooter for Boston last year. And the other player on the perimeter, LaMelo Ball, he didn't shoot very efficiently from 3-point land in Australia. I think he shot sub 30%, but if you've seen him play throughout his time before his time overseas, if you looked at him play in high school, in Chino Hills at Spire Institute, you've seen the shooting potential that he has because of a lot of the shots that he takes from 3-point land are off of his own creation, and he takes a lot of high degree difficulty type of shots. I don't think really there's a lot of 3-point shots generated for him besides when he was playing with Lonzo Ball during his freshman year. We all know LaMelo Ball has great potential as a shooter, and I think him playing with 2 capable distributors and ball handlers and Devontae Graham and Gordon Hayward will really raise his 3-point percentage to something a bit higher than what his stats in Australia showed. And then at the power forward position, we have PJ Washington shooting 37% from 3 as a power forward in your rookie year. Just proves your potential as a shooter in this league. So I only expect that to improve with a year of experience and with him playing with 2 additional playmakers in LaMelo Ball and Gordon Hayward. Next year, I expect Charlotte's record to be around 29-43, which will be a 40.3 win percentage. And this will give them around the 10th seed in the East. So having them on the outside looking in to the Eastern Conference playoff picture. Because if you look at the bottom half of teams contending for the 8th seed in the Eastern Conference, Orlando's literally always competitive for that 8th seed every year. I think they've made the 8th seed 3 years in a row. Washington's going to be getting better with Bradley Beal having another year of experience, with him being the go-to guy on Washington. The young core in Washington getting better, and maybe you get some games with John Wall if they can't really find a trade partner for John Wall. The Hawks are getting better and getting older, and the Chicago Bulls just simply don't have Jim Boylan. Those are the 4 main teams that I view are going to be competing for that 8th seed that are probably going to fall in the 8, 9, and 10 range, maybe above Charlotte. So that's kind of why I view them as just missing out on the playoffs. Estimating some player stats for their main core players, Gordon Hayward, I think he'll get into the 20 points per game club. He's the best player on the team now. He's going to be looked to as that, and he's going to be looked to as the leader of this young team. And I think he's going to have a higher usage role, so he's going to score about 20 points per game, get about 5 assists and 7 rebounds. His efficiency will drop slightly to 47% from the field and 37% from 3, but only slightly though, because Gordon Hayward's always really been an efficient player on the team. Devontae Graham, I think he'll score about 18 points per game, get about 5 assists. I think his efficiency will improve to about 43% from the field and 40% from 3. Again, that comes with him being a year more experienced in the NBA and him playing with 2 additional playmakers in LaMelo Ball and Gordon Hayward. Speaking of LaMelo Ball, I think he'll come in and average about 15 points per game, get about 6 assists per game. I think he'll struggle a bit from the field at about 40%, and I think he'll struggle a bit from 3-point range at about 30, but it is an improvement over what he posted in Australia. But I think it will improve year after year the more he's in the NBA and the more shot coaches help him with his form and whatnot. Similar to Lonzo Ball's improvement with his 3-point shot. I think PJ Washington will drop about 13 points per game, get about 7 rebounds, and I think his efficiency will improve to about 47% from the field and 38% from 3. The situation for Charlotte last year was a lot of their marquee players shot about sub 44% from the field last year. And I think that will definitely change with the addition of more playmakers on this team. I'm not including Terry Rozier into these player estimations because, again, this is players I deem as core members of this team going in the future, and I think it's eventual that Terry Rozier gets traded off of this Hornets team. The direction of this Charlotte Hornets team is rebuilding and chasing an 8th seed. You can afford to do that in a weaker Eastern Conference. You can rebuild and focus on developing your younger talent while being competitive for an 8th seed, because simply the bottom half of the Eastern Conference is not very competitive. In doing so, the Charlotte Hornets will be testing to see if LaMelo Ball could be your franchise player. Like I said, I think he is the player with the highest upside in this draft, in the 2020 draft. They're going to be experimenting to see whether or not Devontae Graham and LaMelo Ball can play in the same backcourt. Again, even though I think Devontae Graham can play off the ball, I think he's still a guard that wants the ball in his hands. So we'll have to see how that offensive fit works between the two. And they're both not great on defense because LaMelo Ball just doesn't have a defensive motor, and Devontae Graham is a bit small even for a point guard. Like I said, I think they're going to try and trade Terry Rozier because his role on this team is kind of diminished now, and I don't think they see him as somebody that can be a part of the team way down the line. And Charlotte's really going to be testing the rest of their young core, a part of the main young core, if that makes any sense. They're going to be testing the potential of PJ Washington, Miles Bridges, and maybe Malik Monk, because Malik Monk's going into his last year of his deal. Can he live up to that potential as the microwave scorer out of Kentucky that he had the promise to be? Miles Bridges going into his 3rd year. PJ Washington, can he really be a knockdown stretch 4 like he was in his rookie year, or was that just a fluke? Another measuring stick will be Gordon Hayward leading a team again like he was doing so in Utah. He put up 17.5 points per game, 7 rebounds and 4 assists very efficiently as a 4th option. So it's going to be really interesting to see what he can do as a first option again, and with him leading some young emerging talent. And in my opinion, Gordon Hayward leading some young emerging talent like Devontae Graham, LaMelo Ball, and all the other names that I named, that should be enough to really put them in the conversation for competing for an 8th seed in the Eastern Conference. The Charlotte Hornets will be a very fun team to watch. LaMelo Ball alone provides excitement, but he'll also have skilled shooters to really kick the ball to in PJ Washington, Gordon Hayward, and Devontae Graham. He'll also have reliable ball handlers to take the pressure off of him in Devontae Graham and Gordon Hayward, and Terry Rozier if they keep him on the team. This team has a young core that they'll definitely try and develop, yet they also have enough talent on hand to go after an 8th seed. All in all, I think we can all say that Charlotte's future is the brightest it's been in the entire 21st century.